Hi, Susie. How are you?
Hi, it's nice to be here. Great.
Good. I'm very grateful to you for agreeing for this interview.
Thank you for
There's
inviting me. Yeah.
there's so much from your book that I want to share. So I'm going to start with your bio. Suzy Miller is a visionary speaker, author, telepathic communicator, multidimensional seer, and integration specialist. She began her life's work after a child diagnosed with autism requested that she integrate his light body with the physical body so that he could function more fully here. Her success with his integration and many thousands of others with a similar request has encouraged her to use her skills to support anyone seeking to more fully express the essence of their true nature. A former pediatric speech language pathologist with a master's degree in education, Susie has collaborated with professionals in a variety of fields from psychology, social work, mainstream education, and medicine to leading edge scientists, metaphysicians, healers, and new thought leaders. She twice collaborated with Dr. William Tiller, professor emeritus, Stanford University, and featured physicist in the movie What the Bleep, spearheading both the autism intention healing experiment as well as an experiment for the elevation of collective human consciousness. A lifelong student of consciousness, Susie has personally facilitated the growth and mastery of hundreds of awesomeism practitioners and thousands of private clients worldwide. She supports the integration of unintegrated aspects of self through private sessions, courses, workshops, articles, speaking engagements, and live events. She specializes in the integration of autism, childhood traumas, and heightened spiritual experiences. Susie, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
I think that just about covers it. Thank you.
All right. So you wrote a book called Awesomeism, which I love the name. It's really wonderful to kind of shift perspectives. And your book is really just about shifting perspectives. I have heard you tell the story of Riley, the child who sort of opened your consciousness to higher possibilities and catapulted you in the direction that you have been leading. And I would love for you to share that story with us here.
Yeah, I was a pediatric speech language pathologist with a private practice in the state of Maine. And Riley was, as many kids came to me, an organization or just offered me, different clients from their client base. And so Riley was one of those, and I was to meet him at his daycare center. And so I went to the daycare center to get to know him and to see what we were going to do. And I was meeting him in 1999. So there just wasn't a whole lot of information for me, anyway, about autism at that time. I graduated with my master's degree in 1986. And in 1986, it was one in 10,000. So there was nobody to have information about. So when I met Riley on that day in his daycare center, he was walking back and forth in the daycare center saying, "It's the millennium, it's 1999." And, had this kind of rote kind of communication that didn't make any sense to me. And I just thought of him as a strange little kid. And, but as he was doing that, I was standing next to the daycare provider and he walked right up to me. He looked me directly in the eyes and he said, "Master." And he was 4 years old at the time. So who knows about millenniums and who knows about, master. But when he said it, I literally felt something move in my body. It was like a cascade of energy ran from my head all the way down to my feet. And so I was a little bit disoriented by that. And I remember thinking, who's the master here? Who has the mastery if you can do that, right?
Right.
And so I took him to the back of the daycare center where I was going to work with him. I sat down against the back of the door because I really didn't know what we were going to do. I had
Mhm.
never encountered somebody like him before. And so I'm just sitting there and he's still marching around in the room. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to wait for him to get comfortable, with me and we'll just settle into each other. While I was waiting for that to happen, I started seeing this body of light floating above his physical body. So it was off and to the right. And it was like if you had made a cutout doll out of that looked like the same size and shape as Riley's body, but above and to the right. That's what it looked like. And it was just filled with light. It was just white light. And there was a little tail hanging off the foot of the light body that dipped into his head and hung down through his head and just kind of dipped in and out of his heart. It was just kind of like hanging there, not attached, just hanging. And I had no idea what I was seeing. I was rubbing my eyes, trying to get it to go away. I was now more confused than I was when he said master. So I was just sitting there trying to figure this all out. And it wouldn't go away. And when it wouldn't go away, I asked inside my own head, I'm like going, what is that? Like, what am I seeing? What is that?
Yeah.
And when I said that to myself, not out loud, I heard a little boy's voice in my head. And the little boy's voice said, that's my light body. You're here to put my light body back with my physical body. And I heard it clear as day. I knew it was him. I didn't even really know it was telepathy at the time.
Mhm.
I knew I had never seen anything like that. I had never heard anything like that. And I just remember thinking, I have no idea why you think I can do that. It's like, I don't even know why. Why am I the one that you're sharing that with?
Right.
And then that was it. It's like I don't even quite honestly know what happened within the rest of that session. I do know that afterwards, I went out and sat in my car and just sat there for a second, kind of frozen. And I knew my life had changed. There was no doubt in my mind. I was excited and interested and curious, but also very confused.
Mhm.
And so he basically took me through a year-long process after that, where I would come and I would see him. I would pretend to be his speech pathologist, right? I would pretend to um, I was still trying to be what I came there to be. Um,
Mhm.
but what was happening in between times and sometimes during the sessions is he was coming to me in dreams. He started bilocating into my house, meaning that I could see a lighter version of him, but it was like seeing a ghost in the house, but it was him clearly. And he started just telling me, this is what I need you to do. This is what I want you to bring. This is how I want you to help me. So this child, that he knew exactly what he needed. I knew nothing. I mean, I knew absolutely
Right.
nothing. And I just followed his direction for that year. And also during that year, I was, you might say, reclaiming some of the mastery that he saw. My guides were coming. There was so much happening in that first year. It was a little bit like mayhem. But with at the end of that year, having followed his instruction, um, at the end of that year, I did an energy session for him. I did it on my birthday, actually, kind of as a gift to myself and as to him. And I did that energy session from afar, from a distance.
Mhm.
I was at my
Mhm.
house, he was at his. The next day, I went to see him physically at his house. And when I went to see him, opened the door, and he was standing at the top of the staircase, and he goes, "Hi, Susie, how are you?" As clear as day. I literally said, "Come here." And so he came down the stairs and we went into his sister's room and I gave him some pens and some paper and I like, what happened? I still have the papers that he wrote. I laminated them and kept them for all these years.
Gosh.
But, and I basically like, what happened here? And one of the things that he says that I shared in the book is um, he said, you love them. And I started to cry. And when I started to cry, he said, said something like, pull your tears, like pull them back up, put them back in your eyes kind of thing. And so I was trying to get myself together and he said something about, I don't remember the exact words, but he said something, you love them. It's magic. Now advance the magic. So there you
Oh
go.
my gosh.
Yeah.
That story is, oh my gosh, it's so heartwarming. It's so fantastic.
It's crazy making too.
It's crazy making. So you were doing energy work prior to coming into contact with
Never. No.
Riley.
Mm-mm. No, I was
Oh,
no. I was a full-time pediatric speech pathologist. Was not doing energy work. I was the only thing I would say that was even remotely close to that prior. I mean, I had a friend who was in the Barbara Brennan Hands of Light school. So
okay.
she had a lot of awareness as far as energy goes. But the closest I had really come to anything like mystical, you might say, or anything along those lines is prior to meeting Riley, I had been involved with a Gnostic Orthodox monastery.
Okay.
And so, a deeply religious connotation. And I had had some really profound experiences with Mary, with the Mother of God, or with Jesus's mother, right?
Yeah.
And where um, you know, lamps in front of her would swing when I was meditating with her. But other than those kinds of things, I had an interest in it. My
Yes.
kids went to a Waldorf school, and so,
Yeah.
Waldorf is open in that way too.
Yep.
But as far as having my own awareness of my own healing abilities,
Yeah.
I didn't have that. I had not seen light bodies or even worked in that realm at all. And that's why I was so grateful for Anne when she was the one that was going to Barbara Brennan at the time because
Mhm.
she could answer a lot of my questions and I had a lot of them because yeah.
Wow. So this 1 year that you worked with Riley basically just broke you open and expanded your
Yeah.
awareness and your abilities for all things.
Yeah, it was almost like whatever he was able to see, I didn't
Mhm.
even know existed. And so I think just the trigger of the word master
Yeah.
and whatever that set off within me from that moment forward, everything that could support that mastery was coming back. And so I was, I 99, I changed quite a bit. So there was,
Yes.
I was like, kind of very linear, kind of left-brained kind of speech pathologist,
Yeah.
statistics and, you know, data and all that other
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And then all bets are off, because I think that right brain just started opening up again. So yeah, and it's been a ride ever since, I'll have to say.
And I feel like there was a moment where you mentioned this was like a remembrance that he rekindled in you.
Yeah, I can say that looking back at it now because I also remember being like 7 or 8 years old and standing in my front yard looking up at the sky and having my mom come out on the porch and say, "Susie, what are you doing? You know, why are you looking up at the sky?" And I remember my response was, "I'm waiting for the children to come." And I didn't know why I said that. I didn't know, but I knew that I was waiting for children. And then, you say, I think I had a lot of intuitive skills and awareness as a young child. And I think as with anything, those things have a tendency to get shut down.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, no, what are you looking at the sky for children? It's like they're
Right.
in the neighborhood, right? And so no malice or anything, but just it didn't
Yeah.
make sense.
Right.
But I think that all got shut down for a variety of reasons.
Hmm.
And I think Riley just maybe had noticed it was still there, or maybe noticed that it was time to bring that to fruition or something. And so he said the magic word, and then everything that was, yeah, I mean, I had guides starting to come to me. I um, had different energies that would sit on the end of my bed and teach me different things. It was mayhem. That's what I mean. I mean, psychological mayhem, you might say, for that whole year.
Yeah.
Just trying to just trying to get your bearings, because you go from, I think that this is what the world is, and this is what
Yes.
reality is, to no, that's not it.
Right.
It's much bigger. And Riley used to say that to me. I didn't get it then, I get it now. But he used to say, there's the real world, and then there's my world. And I thought, no, he'd say, there's the real world, and then there's your world. I thought I was in the real world. I thought this was the real world.
Right.
And he was going, yeah, no, there's so much more. So
There's so much more. There's so much more for so many people, for all of us.
for all of us, everybody, we are
Yeah.
all, we're multidimensional beings, right? But we
Yeah.
we look through such a small lens, and we've been conditioned to such a small lens that we don't know who we are. We
Right.
know who we've been conditioned to perceive ourselves as
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, that's a really thank you for sharing that story. It just kind of opens our minds up to the possibilities. And then now I want to move on to another story that I heard you tell. And this basically pulls us out of our linear timeline thinking, right? I want to talk about the 16-year-old that came into your practice.
Yeah.
So can you share that
So,
story?
yeah, so this has actually been like within the last 3 years. I mean, this is a more recent experience. And just so your listeners know, right now, I mean, I dropped away from doing any speech pathology in 2008. I haven't done anything else other than energy work and energetic support, multidimensional energy work since then. And so this client, I'm just going to call her G, but this client came, and she's a speller. She's a non-speaker. She was 16 at the time. And prior to her coming for that session, prior to her mother asking for it, I kept hearing in my meditations the timeless nature of being, the timeless nature of being. And different clients would come in, and I would hear it from them too. And I was like, what is the timeless nature of being? What is that? What are we talking about? And then G's mother set up the appointment. She set the appointment up because G was, she's nonverbal, she's a speller, and she also is someone who knows that she helps children who are under duress or being abused, or it's almost like I always say, like, if a child would reach out in their prayers when they're going through a hard time, G would be the one that would be answering some of that, supporting them. Does that make sense?
Telepathically?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Telepathically, energetically, multidimensionally, right? She would be
Okay.
supporting them. So the request for that session was not that I try to talk G out of doing what she was doing, but that I just help it make it easier for her to do what she was doing. So I said, okay, we come. And I was looking at her energetic field, and there were definitely some things that wanted to shift and change and reorient so that she could be better at what she was doing. This was happening during the end of COVID. So,
Okay.
towards the end of COVID. And she was saying that during that time, so many children were at home, they couldn't go to school. Their parents were frustrated. Their parents were stressed. They were losing their jobs. There was so much tension going on that a lot of these kids were being emotionally hurt, physically in some cases. And so she was just hearing all of their voices of,
Okay.
and trying to support as she could. So we did the work, the energetic work. And as we're doing that energetic work, I said to her, I said, this is really interesting to me because here you are, a young woman of 16. You don't have your own voice. Like you can speak. I mean, you can share through your spelling, but you can't speak. And I said, and yet, whatever you're going to do with these kids everywhere, said it's like you're giving them their voice. It's like
Yes.
you're the impetus in that moment where they need to say, hey, be nice, or hey, don't hurt me, or stand up for themselves in some way, so that they can stop that energy or that experience. And so I was explaining that to her. And as I'm explaining it to her, I said, it's like this. I said, when I was 16, I was, being like yelled at, put down by
Hmm.
somebody who, an adult male much bigger than me. And I was literally on the floor, with him pointing at me. And in that moment, something in my 16-year-old self, it's like I pulled myself up and I poked him in the chest and I said, you have no idea who you're speaking to. And I ran upstairs and I fell on my bed and that was all I had. But I said to G, I said, it's like that. It's like you're going to give somebody that impetus to like take charge in that moment. And then all of a sudden, I just had this thought, the timeless nature of being went through. And I go, wait, 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 wait. I remember just saying, hold on a second. And I started to cry. And and her mom says, is everything okay? What's going on? And I said, okay. I said, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You're 16 now. I was 16 then. And I said, but gee, I said, was it you? Was it you who helped me on that day? And she types, I mean, she spells. So
Yeah.
she's spelling pump, 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 pump. And so I already knew the answer because I could hear it, but her mom is waiting to receive it. And her mom reads out what she had said. And she said something along the lines of, I have known that I support children in need. My soul has always supported children in need, whether I'm in a body or out of a body, doesn't matter. And I was grateful to be of service to you that day. So I'm sitting there going, the timeless nature of being, if that young woman hadn't been there to support me
Right.
energetically when I was 16, I wouldn't be here supporting her when she's 16 to go on and support all those other 16-year-olds.
Yes.
So I'm like, I, I don't know how that works. I don't know anything about that cognitively, But what I knew in that moment was that time is not linear. And again, this reality is so much more than we perceive it to be. It's not this forward motion.
Right.
We go backwards, we go forwards. We have, yeah, there's so much more to it than that. So, yeah, she's quite a
It's so that story gives me chills also because it's hard to imagine what life is when it's not linear. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how does this happen? Like, how is she? And also just the fact that she's saying whether she's in a body or not.
So basically what that said to me is that her soul, right? The soul's in a body, out of a body, right? You might say her light body, in a body, out of a body.
Yeah.
That light body knows that, holds that information. She's aware of that's what she does. When she says she's aware, it's like she's consciously aware.
Yeah.
Many of us do all kinds of things, you know, um,
Mhm.
our souls do all kinds of things, but we might not be consciously aware of it. She is. And so many of these kids, at least the ones I've worked with, are consciously aware of what their, you might say, soul directive is, or what their
Mhm.
role is in that way. It's pretty profound.
Yes. So are you finding that the children that you work with or just the the people that you work with because it's maybe not just children, but they are aware of the limitations of their physical body because their soul is is expanded and they know what their purpose is. So like they have a message to give, but they just have a hard time giving it because their bodies aren't able to they aren't able to communicate the way that we're used to communicating.
Yeah, that that's kind of the case. So for for this population in particular, the frequency of the light body, the frequency of the soul or the spirit or the essence or whatever you want to call that, the spirit that goes on and on and on into infinity, that frequency for them is much higher than physical human reality. And I like to say that they're hanging out like in oneness. They're hanging
Hmm.
out in the field of all that is, ever has been, ever will be. And then that soul is dropped into a body that functions in separation.
Hmm.
We all know we function in separation because we don't know who we are in spirit, right? And that's
Right.
part of the game of coming to planet Earth. We get to pretend, or maybe not pretend, we get to forget the vastness of who we are so that we can play the game of remembering, right? Just like
Hmm.
Riley's like, okay, let's play that game. We'll play the game of remembering. So, so I think that what happens is when this frequency, this light body frequency, comes into a human experience, the frequency of the human experience is completely different than what they're still conscious of, right? So you got like, it's almost like round peg, square hole,
Yeah.
right? It's like you've got this awareness that cannot um, cannot be expressed in a world of separation.
Hmm. Hmm.
But what's really amazing as humanity is starting to reduce its separation
Hmm.
as we're invited into oneness, and usually separation gets really, really loud before it moves into another phase, it's almost like anytime we're going from one phase of consciousness to another,
Yeah.
that phase, the old phase, will go into chaos because
Right.
it's falling apart, right? And
Right.
that's exactly what we're seeing in the world right now.
Yeah.
if we just let that fall apart because it's meant to, what we're moving into is this field of oneness. That field of oneness is much more like who these children actually are.
Yeah.
And we know that we're ready for this to a certain extent because there's things like the telepathy tapes out, and there's things
Right.
like, where you've got a huge population of the world that's now open to ideas about
Yeah.
telepathy, and they're seeing that these kids have capacity that, again, just like Riley did for me, takes you from a very small worldview to a much bigger vantage point. And this is happening more globally now. It's not just
Yeah.
happening to certain
Right.
individuals. Now it's happening on a bigger scale. And so now you also have many more people who are telepathic and or are willing to talk about their telepathic nature.
Yes.
Every human being on the planet's telepathic.
Right.
It's everybody. It's part of who we actually are. But again, we've been conditioned out of that. Let's use our left brain. Let's not, let's denounce things that sound crazy or sound too out there. But
Mhm.
they only sound too out there because we haven't evolved into them yet.
Right. Right. And the fact that we're educated in a way where we put our trust into outside authorities.
Yeah,
And so when we do that, then we're not really connecting with our intuition and really,
right.
connecting into our own soul spirit. Um, I do think that the collective is moving more towards unity. And
Mhm.
so that I think helps everything. Is sort of like there are so many people on that path right now that are working towards unity and not living in a divisive world, and also consciously working to suspend judgment,
Yes, yes. Yeah, it
right?
is. Mhm. Yeah, more and
And
more moving in that direction. And that is we all, from a soul perspective, we all kind of signed up for that this time around. That's the contract that's common to every single person on this planet. We all chose to be here at a time of collective human evolution. So,
yeah, and so the work that you do, when you started with Riley and connecting his light body with his physical body, like Perfect Child, my website exists because I truly believe that every child is perfect because we are the manifestation of this spirit, right? This soul that comes through. Now, with your work, do you actually work with adults who are interested in sort of understanding their soul purpose and connecting more deeply with their spirit?
um, no, yes and no. Let's go both directions. So, the yes of that is, over the years, I have worked with a lot of people who have had early childhood trauma or who have had big heightened spiritual experiences that they wanted support with in their integration process, right?
Mhm.
So if a client comes and they have that, that's that definitely is something that I can be of support with. I don't talk to people about their life purpose or those kinds of things
Mhm.
because I don't think that that's my business. I don't think that that's, um, I think I like to keep things simple because sometimes in multidimensional reality, things can get very complex. It's like there's a lot of
Mhm.
moving parts in some ways. So for me personally, I have to bring it back down to what is our purpose in being here? And generally speaking, our purpose in being here is remembering, right? Clear and
Mhm.
just, and the only reason I can even say that is because that's what happened to me, right? That's what
Right.
happened for me. And so, and I also am a firm believer that as different aspects of ourselves integrate, we naturally and organically know how we want to utilize who we are.
Hmm.
So again, you were just talking about we abdicate our power to other people. And I think that's one of the ways in which we can do that, where we can say, well, I'll come to Susie and she'll tell me what my purpose is. I'm like, oh, no,
Right.
no, she won't.
Yeah.
She won't do that. But what I have seen be most helpful to coming into a greater sense of purpose here is really supporting and healing and nurturing, integrating some of those places where we got separated from ourselves. And that's typically in our early childhoods. We have these experiences that, just it can be very subtle, just like, why are you looking up at the sky for children to come instead of playing with the kids in the neighborhood? It doesn't have to be malicious or anything like that. But in
Right.
that moment, instead of like, what really, what kind of kids, you know, where would they be coming from? Instead of being, you know, curious,
Curious.
right? You know, and so little people get shut down all the time. You think about how many things children say because they've literally just come from spirit. They just came into the world. They're one or they're two or they're three, or sometimes even into their, you know, usually, seven or eight is when things start going different. But again, it's like these kids say things because they're still connected.
Right.
And then what we say to them is, well, that's not the way we do it here, right? That's oneness.
Right.
We don't do it that way. We do it separation. See,
Right.
and they get that imprint.
Yes.
And then, and some of those imprints are strong enough to send us up and out of our bodies. Like
Mm.
somebody that gets hurt or is abused, or maybe even somebody who's very sensitive, who's yelled at very strongly or repeatedly.
Yeah.
You kind of have a tendency to go up and out. And what does that mean? When we go up and out, we go into a frequency, or we're seeking a frequency that feels more compassionate for that moment,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
we get so used to staying there that very often we don't make our way back to the body.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
So we
That's
don't
a
integrate.
lot.
We go back out from the body. The light body leaves a little bit the body behind. And
Mhm.
this is where you see adults that are a little bit numb. And I think we're all a little bit numb right now because there's just so much going on, so
Yeah.
much coming up collectively. It's not bad or wrong that we do that. It's a safety mechanism.
Right.
But what most people don't do that I think is really important, most people who go up and out, they like it, right? It feels good. So then they go into other things that keep them up and out. A lot of people go
Mhm.
into spiritual, you know, uh, all kinds of experiences because it feels good there. And that's great. That fortifies us, that strengthens us.
Yeah.
But if we just stay out, we
Right.
miss the opportunity of having a human life, having a human experience, fully having a human experience. So I always tell people, if you're going to do one piece of work, do some inner child work, do some
Mhm.
breath work, do something that's going to bring up what created separation for you in the first place. And
Right.
let's love ourselves through that. Let's have some compassion where maybe there wasn't compassion before. That opens up all of the gifts of our inner children.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a lot of work, is the inner child work is
Yeah,
really important.
yeah, yeah.
What I really liked about your book was it was just so, focused on giving parents tools, just like a different perspective. And what stood out for me as far as what you talk about in the book is when you talked about the energetics of emotions.
Yeah.
That's very rarely do people talk about that, but it's so important because children are so attuned to,
They're still connected to spirit.
yeah, right? And so
Mhm.
they're attuned to the energetics of what's happening. And so you could be saying one thing and not actually meaning it, and they get that.
Yeah.
So can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, goes back to our conditioning. I have four daughters, it's like you're conditioned to always be upbeat or always try to be something or always, and so, we were taught that if you're sad, you don't tell your child you're sad. That might make them uncomfortable or might make them whatever. And I'm also not saying to project your sadness all over your child because that's not healthy either, right? But what I am saying is when a child asks you how you feel, they already know the answer to that question. They're asking you because they sense something is off. And
Mhm.
so if we say we're sad when they ask, if we say we're sad when we are sad, they kind of go, "Oh, yeah, she knows how she feels." And so they go off and they play.
Yeah.
But if we say one thing and feel something else, they're confused, they're concerned, and then they have to go about trying to get you to understand that that's not what's going on, right?
Right.
I had a client a long time ago that I was this was when I was still a speech pathologist, but after Riley. And I remember I was upstairs in his room with him. We were having a speech session, and all of a sudden he started to just bawl his eyes out, like went from happy laughing to crying in seconds. I did what I think most people would do. I was like feeling around on the ground, like, did he get a pin in his leg? Did something sharp hit him? What happened? Did a bug bite him? I didn't know what it was, bee sting. Nothing's on the ground. And I look at him, I go, "Are you okay?" And he's just sobbing, sobbing. I said, "Show me. Show me what this is about." He took my hand, he walked me downstairs, across the kitchen, all the way to the other side of the house, bottom floor, where his mom was in her room behind her door. And I could hear her crying. And so I knocked on the door and she opened the door and I said, "Your son was doing fine and then all of a sudden started crying. I asked him what it was about. He brought me to you. So can you tell us a little bit about what's going on for you right now? Can you share?" And she wasn't talking to him necessarily. She said to me, "I had a therapist that was all lined up and she was going to be coming, in the next day or so. And then she just canceled." And she goes, "I'm just tired. I'm tired of people not showing up when I need them to." And she was having all those feelings. But the moment she just said it out loud, he literally went like this. He like wiped his tears, grabbed my hand, and took me back upstairs to play. He was done, right? He was like, so children in general feel everything.
Yeah.
And children diagnosed with autism throughout their whole lives feel everything. So you can't, we can't say one thing and mean something else with them. They're really looking at that level of authenticity.
Yeah.
Um, and it's hard because we've all been conditioned to do it a different way. So,
Yeah, and what strikes me as from your story that you're telling is that they're not, because they're really pure, they're not putting any extra emphasis on any of these emotions. When you acknowledge it, then they're
Yeah,
like, okay, great.
that's it.
You be sad. Cool. I'll see you
Yeah,
later.
yeah.
Right? We don't have to put so much like pity on somebody who's sad. Oh, do I need to go there and be in that place with you? We don't,
Mhm.
right?
No.
And so these children are so pure, they're showing us a different way of being.
Well, I literally have had thousands of kids say this particular phrase over and over. They say, "We don't care how our parents feel. We care that they know how they feel." And they're not being mean when they say we don't care how they feel. They're saying it's like what you just said, we don't have to engage with that. But if they don't know how they feel, then that starts to reverberate out on us, and then we start acting that out. And any parent of a young child, any parent of a child diagnosed with autism knows when they're having a really hard day, and if they haven't acknowledged that themselves, their kids are having a really hard day. Yeah.
Right. And then their kids probably feel like they're having a hard day because of the kid, because they're lying to the child and the child doesn't understand why.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a lot of kids too say, you know, we're always wanting these kids to be speakers. We want them to be verbal, right? And I've had so many kids just say, "But why?" It's like you lie with your words. Why why are we going to and you think about communication that you've been able to have with somebody, maybe a good friend or a partner, or where you don't really need to talk to each other. Like it just feels so yummy just to be in their presence. You can talk, but you don't have to. There's something much deeper about those unsaid things, more true, right?
Yeah.
We know this as adults. Sometimes if we're in a very emotional situation, we will lose our words, right? That emotion
Right.
starts coming over us. We might be angry, or we might be sad, or we might be whatever it is. But all of a sudden, it's like we stop talking.
Yeah.
And it's purposeful, because in those moments, the emotion
Mm-hmm.
is stronger than anything we could say.
Right.
And so we kind of like go, oh, I just have to be with this feeling. Well, the kids are kind of like going, unless your words are authentic, unless happy means happy and sad means sad,
Yeah.
then why am I trying to take all that energy to figure out how to communicate?
Right.
Yeah. So
Wasted energy.
wasted energy. Yeah, totally.
I'm feeling like hearing your story and feeling like a good exercise for parents is to learn to listen.
Learning to listen, asking questions, having some compassion for themselves. I think that's another thing that we're not taught. We're we're taught that we're supposed to be able to figure everything out, and we don't have everything figured out. And I think that's an honest statement to make. And I think it's okay to also say to a child, I mean, we don't get a manual to raise kids in the first place. You definitely don't get a manual to raise kids who are multidimensional beings and are aware of it, or are telepathic and know it. it
Yeah.
we didn't get that memo, right? And so we've got to cut ourselves some slack. And when we're having a hard day, I think it's okay to say, this is really scary. I'm so overwhelmed. I want to be the best I can be for you, but I don't even know what that entails yet.
Yeah.
I think just that authenticity. I've
Hmm.
seen more kids turn around, say I love you, hug their parents, put their hands on their face, snuggle up to them,
Yeah.
just because they said what was true,
Right.
you
And
know?
just be able to receive that
Yeah.
and
Yes.
not blame themselves.
Right. And that's a very big just, isn't it? Just don't blame yourself. Well, we all blame
We
ourselves for
all
something.
do.
We
Yep.
all been conditioned to blame, shame, guilt of some sort,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But the moments that we catch those and kind of go, I just don't think I'll go down that road. I think I'll back up from that. I'll take a
Yeah.
nice deep breath. I'll give myself a little love for a second, even if it's just a tap on the heart or it's okay, talking us off the cliff. Just
Yeah.
those little micro movements make a huge difference in the vibrational energy that we're putting out on any given day. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That it's so important. I guess what I was trying to say, and not like learning to listen, but just learning to be present
yeah,
because like you said, we aren't given a manual and there's no such thing as a manual because we're all individuals. And our
exactly.
children are so unique. And the only way we're going to be able to maintain that connection and exercise grace for ourselves, I think, is to be in the present
Yeah.
and not buy into that conditioning that we're sold that we need to be the authorities and we have to be able to provide and do X, Y, and Z for our children. It's more like the opposite, just kind of, right? Accepting them who they are and understanding them and really projecting love as opposed to fear.
Yes, and that's why I think inner child work, I speak a lot about the presence process by Michael Brown, which is a book. It's basically a 10-week process, but it's remarkable for getting to the core of certain experiences because long before any of us had children, we were children and we got hurt in different ways. I mean, that's just part of coming here to planet Earth, right? We got hurt in different ways. But unless we go back and reparent that those parts of ourselves, it makes it really hard for us not to react to some of the things that our kids are bringing up. And they're not bringing it up maliciously. They're not trying to trigger us or, you know, poke us in that wounded spot. But they're kind of custom made to do that. It's like
Yeah.
they and it's a really beautiful thing when we realize like I just got done with a class this morning and we've been talking about mirroring and we had talked about it last week and people were talking about the aha moments that they've had this last week because they started asking questions instead of making statements. They started to see where they were triggered. And then instead of making that about the child, take that back inside and go, how old is that little person inside of me that's feeling that trigger? We can do this. It doesn't need psychotherapy or analysis or anything like that. We have a million opportunities in any given day to kind of go, oh, how am I feeling about that? What does that remind me of? And usually that one moment of, oh, I know, that reminds me of that. That's all it
Right.
takes. That
Right.
that aha moment, you've already collapsed it. And I think the other thing that's so important is when we're sad, just be sad.
Mhm.
It's like when we're blissed out, be blissed out. It's, allowing what is
Mm.
to actually be, I think really starts with how are we feeling? What's going
Yeah.
on? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is a lot of the work that you do with parents just basically helping them to find their authentic self?
It ends up working out that way. Yeah. Yeah, we do that through different means depending on what the circumstances are and, um, a little bit of energetic work, a little bit of hearing information directly from their kids, through telepathic communication, a little bit of inner child work. That seems to be the crux of things for the most
Yeah.
part. Mhm.
So you basically have courses and coaching, not just for parents of awesome kids, but also people who want to learn more about working with those that have been diagnosed. So you also have like a group of awesomeism professionals
Yeah.
that also do the work that you do to
Yeah.
just sort of expand it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. We have, like an integration series, that is just a 6-week series. And then we have a mentorship that's a 3-month series. One of those just ended today with lots of tears. And it's like, it's just amazing to watch transformation like that. And that's a combination of professionals and parents. I also offer an apprenticeship, where I just take a small group of individuals for a 6-month process. And then I, present my clients to them. Then it's giving me the opportunity to step away from some of the private work and offer that to other people. So, yeah.
Perfect. And so those that mentorship, apprenticeship is for currently SLPs and sort of occupational therapists, those types, right? To learn.
Not necessarily. I mean, in the mentorship, we have parents, we have professionals of all kinds.
Okay.
It could be anybody from, a yoga instructor to a physician to a therapist to you know, uh, somebody who does equine therapy. It could be just anybody who just has a deep love for this population and would like to um, move it into a more multidimensional perspective or a broader lens. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and
Yeah, that's
the apprenticeship is more geared towards people that ultimately do want to end up, you know, doing sessions with people, or, they really have a way in which they want to move this into their life experience, to their careers and things like that. Yeah. And potentially work with us. So, yeah.
okay. And then currently, if people jump on your website, will they be able to find a practitioner that's like you, right? That's been trained by you in their different locations, like worldwide?
We did that probably like 10 or 15 years ago, and we don't have that list on our
Okay.
website anymore, mainly because so much has changed in that time that we will do that with the apprentices that are going through now. So
Okay.
they'll be listed in April. Um, and one of the things that I do want to open people up to is people do not need to be in your proximity, in your physical proximity. It's nice if they can be. And if
Mhm.
you're doing, I would say, more standard therapies, obviously you want them there. But because this is really multidimensional, just like I sit in front of the computer every day and talk to people all over the world and about, their children.
Yeah.
Their children don't need to be there physically. They can. I love it when they come in and out. I love it when they share insights. But it's really an opportunity again to kind of get information directly from that higher self, you might say, of the child, and start implementing that in the physical world so that we can see that actually invites these kids more into their bodies. It also invites parents more into, or professionals more into the, you might say, the multidimensional aspects of themselves or the spiritual aspects of themselves. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a win-win. So,
Yeah, yes, definitely. And shifting perspectives.
yes,
It's
always.
yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, well, that was really helpful. I love the information that you shared and the work that you're doing. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we end our time together?
No, other than this is really an amazing time, like right here, right now, there is so much support for the kids for this kind of work. There's so much support for humanity moving in a more positive direction, even as the old caves. So I would just say be optimistic, that things are really going in the right direction, even though they may not feel like it on a
Yeah.
daily basis quite yet. But um, yeah, there's a lot coming. So.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to ask, and I don't know if you really want to answer this question, but do you feel if a parent has a child that's been diagnosed with autism and they're finding that the whatever program they're in, whether it's school or outside of school, isn't working, would you recommend that they seek out your offerings just so that they can be in a different space themselves and help themselves?
Mine or anybody else's that is kind of expanding the perspective, because my idea is that if something's not working, whatever it is isn't broken and the child's not broken. It's just not the right configuration to bring about the next stage of support or the next stage of awareness. And I think those two things go hand in hand. It's always the more awareness we have, the more we're stretching and expanding ourselves, the more we are, you might say, inviting ourselves into the worlds of the kids. And I've had so many people over the years go, I've tried all these things, I've done this, I've done that. I typically wouldn't talk to somebody who does what you do, like, or I don't even know what
Right.
you do. It's like, I don't know what that is.
Right.
But again, it always makes me smile because what that's saying is their child is already expanding them into new realms and realities,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And I love that because we'll do things for our kids that we might not do for ourselves. So,
Absolutely. They're the catalysts.
yes.
Now, along the same lines, is there something that you, maybe one or two things that you would recommend? Because I firmly believe that when you set an intention, the
Mhm.
universe delivers.
100%.
So, is there something that you would share with a parent who is struggling? What is the one thing that you think that they could do to bring in that intention of support from the universe?
Well, um, one, if we keep the intention to know the truth of our children, to know who they actually are, not necessarily who we want them to be or who we think they should be, but if we really set that intention, I really want to know this person that's growing up in my house. I want to know them. I think that's a great intention. I also think, as I said earlier, any kind of work we do to support our own inner children cannot help but support our outer children. So I love The Presence Process by Michael Brown. I recommend it every chance I get. So that's another. And I think the other thing is that when you have a child who doesn't speak, we have a tendency to stop speaking ourselves. We have a tendency to stop assuming competence or assuming that they're still in there, even though they may not be able to express all that they are yet. Speak to them like they're in there. I
Yeah.
think it's just a very it makes a lot of difference to the kids because they are in there. It's just that their bodies are not agreeing with um,
Yeah.
the essence, you might say, that's animating it. Yeah,
Yeah. And maybe that's an opportunity to practice understanding or seeking out communication beyond words.
beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susie.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I look forward to following everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.